The Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition was silent. 300 delegates from across the known universe sat in their seats. Their eyes watched the large screen that floated in the center of the room. On it played footage from the Battle of Nexus Station. Ships made of scrap metal and broken parts fired weapons that should not have worked. They destroyed enemy vessels 10 times their size. And at the center of it all was a human ship held together by welding and desperate hope. Ambassador Velketh of the Therian Collective stood at the speaking platform. His blue skin glowed softly under the lights. His 4 eyes moved across the crowd of aliens who whispered among themselves. "What you see," Velketh said slowly, "is not destruction. It is salvation. The humans did not start the war at Nexus Station. They ended it. They saved 3 species from complete death. My own people among them." A loud voice cut through the hall. High Arbiter Zindel of the Kethari Dominion rose from his seat. His gray scales caught the light as he pointed one clawed finger at the screen. "What I see," Zindel hissed, "is a species that turned garbage into weapons of mass destruction in less than 2 days. Today they save us. Tomorrow they destroy us. These humans are dangerous. They must be controlled." The whispers grew louder. Many delegates nodded at Zindel's words. Others looked uncertain. Fear was easy to spread in a room full of beings who had just watched the impossible happen. Far from the Great Hall, in the cold darkness of space, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her ship. The Prometheus Rising was not beautiful. Its hull was covered in patches and repairs. Parts of it came from 6 different species. Nothing matched. Everything worked. Elena was a small woman with short dark hair and tired eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. The battle at Nexus Station had taken everything from her crew, but they had won. They had survived. That was enough. "Captain," said her first officer, a tall man named James Porter, "we have new orders from Earth Command." Elena took the datapad from his hand. She read it twice. Then she read it again. "The Graveyard of Titans," she whispered. Porter's face went pale. Every spacer knew about the graveyard. It was an ancient battlefield at the edge of known space. 1,000 years ago, 2 great empires had fought their final war there. They destroyed each other completely. Now their ships floated dead in the void. Massive vessels the size of small moons. Technology that no living species understood. "Command wants us to investigate a distress signal from inside the graveyard," Elena said. "And while we're there, they want us to assess salvage potential." "Salvage?" Porter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Captain, no one goes to the graveyard. The technology is unstable. Ships that have tried to salvage there have never returned." Elena looked out the window at the stars. "No alien ships have returned. Humans have never tried." She turned to face her bridge crew. They were tired. They were scared. They were human. Set course for the Graveyard of Titans. Back at the Coalition Hall, the debate continued. Zindal had gathered supporters around him. They demanded restrictions on human salvage operations. They wanted limits on what humans could build and where they could travel. "You speak of fear," Velketh said calmly. "But fear of what? That humans might save us again? That they might solve problems we cannot solve ourselves?" "I speak of survival," Zindal replied. "The humans have been in space for only 200 years. In that time they have advanced faster than any species in recorded history. They do not discover technology. They steal it. They take our scraps and our garbage, and they turn it into weapons. What happens when they decide they want more than scraps?" An old delegate from the Merchant Guild raised her hand. Her voice was soft but carried across the hall. "I have traded with humans for 40 years, she said. "I have seen them take broken machines and make them work again. I have seen them look at problems that my engineers called impossible and solve them before lunch. They are not dangerous because they want to harm us. They are dangerous because they refuse to accept that anything is impossible." Zindal slammed his fist on his desk. "That is exactly my point. A species that cannot accept limits is a species that will eventually have no limits. And a species with no limits will rule or destroy everything else." The hall erupted in argument. Delegates shouted at each other across the room. Old alliances cracked. New fears took root. Velketh watched it all with sad eyes. He had seen what the humans could do. He had watched them build a fleet from nothing and save his people from extinction. He did not fear them. He respected them. But he also understood why others were afraid. On the Prometheus Rising, Chief Engineer Marcus Webb stared at the navigation charts. The graveyard of Titans appeared as a red zone. Forbidden space. Dead space. Beautiful, he whispered. Captain Vasquez stood beside him. Most people would say terrifying. Webb was a large man with thick arms covered in burn scars from decades of working with machines. His eyes were bright with excitement. Captain, do you know what's in that graveyard? Ships built by species that mastered technology 1,000 years ago. Energy cores that could power entire planets. Alloys we've never seen before. Weapons that make our best look like toys. He turned to face her. To everyone else, it's a tomb. To me, it's the greatest opportunity in human history. Elena nodded slowly. And if the technology is too advanced, too dangerous? Webb smiled. It was the smile of a man who had spent his life being told things were impossible. Captain, there's no such thing as too advanced. There's only technology we haven't figured out yet. Give me enough time and enough spare parts, and I can make anything work. Elena looked at her crew. Porter at navigation, Webb at engineering, Dr. Yuki Tanaka at the science station. 20 other men and women who had chosen to fly into the unknown on a ship made of scraps and dreams. The galaxy thinks we're dangerous, Elena said quietly. Maybe it's time we showed them why. The Prometheus Rising turned toward the edge of known space. Behind them, the Coalition continued to argue about what humans were and what they might become. Ahead of them, ancient warships waited in silence. The humans were coming, and they were hungry for scraps. The Prometheus Rising dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the graveyard of Titans. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. They simply stared at what lay before them. Ships floated in the darkness, but calling them ships felt wrong. They were mountains of metal, cities of steel and glass and materials that had no name. Some were broken in half, their insides open to the void. Others looked almost complete, as if their crews had simply walked away and never returned. They stretched across space for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the arm of her chair. She had seen many things in her years of space travel. She had never seen anything like this. My God, whispered James Porter. They're enormous. Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked at her science station. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. Data filled her screens. Captain, I'm reading over 600 distinct vessel signatures. The smallest is twice the size of our largest battleship. The largest is... She paused and checked her readings again. The largest is approximately 8 kilometers long. Marcus Webb made a sound that was half laugh and half cry. 8 kilometers. Do you understand what that means? The power cores alone must be the size of buildings. The weapon systems, the shields, the propulsion. He shook his head in wonder. We could study this place for 100 years and still not understand everything. Elena forced herself to focus. What about the distress signal? Tanaka adjusted her sensors. Coming from deep inside the graveyard. Coordinates point to one of the larger vessels near the center. The signal is weak but definitely human in origin. Human? Porter frowned. I thought no human ships had been here before. That's what the official records say, Elena replied. But official records don't always tell the whole truth. Someone came here before us, and they need help. She stood from her chair and looked at her crew. Take us in. Slow and careful. I want constant sensor sweeps. This place has been dead for 1,000 years, but that doesn't mean it's safe. The Prometheus Rising moved forward into the graveyard. Dead ships passed on either side like sleeping giants. Some still had lights flickering in their windows. Power systems that had survived a millennium of neglect. Others were dark and cold. Tombs for crews that had died in a war no one remembered. Webb had moved to a secondary station and was scanning everything they passed. His voice was soft with amazement. Captain, the hull composition on these ships. I've never seen anything like it. It's some kind of metal alloy that our sensors can barely read. And look at this. He pointed at his screen. Those weapons mounts. They're built for energy weapons that would make our plasma cannons look like flashlights. Can we salvage any of it? Elena asked. Can we? Webb laughed. Captain, I could spend the rest of my life in this graveyard and never run out of things to take apart and study. The question isn't whether we can salvage. The question is, where do we even start? Tanaka suddenly sat up straight. Captain, I'm detecting another ship. Not ancient, Modern. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Identification? Cathari. A battle group. 12 warships. Tanaka's voice was steady, but her face was pale. They just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the graveyard. They're moving toward us. Porter ran calculations on his console. At their current speed, they'll reach us in approximately 18 hours. Have they seen us? Elena asked. Yes. They're sending a transmission. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. Gray scales, yellow eyes, sharp teeth arranged in something that was not quite a smile. Commander Thexral of the Cathari Dominion. Human vessel, Thexral said. His voice was cold and precise. You are in violation of Coalition space regulations. The Graveyard of Titans is forbidden territory. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Elena stepped forward. Commander, we're here responding to a distress signal. We have every right. You have no rights. Thexral cut her off. Your species has become a threat to galactic stability. The Coalition may be too weak to act, but the Cathari are not. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed. The screen went dark. Porter turned to Elena. Captain, we can't fight 12 warships. We should run. If we run, we leave whoever sent that distress signal to die. Elena replied. And we lose access to the greatest salvage opportunity in human history. Webb spoke up from his station. Captain, if you give me time, I can make modifications to our ship, some of the technology in these ancient vessels. I might be able to integrate it with our systems. In 18 hours? Webb's smile was tired but determined. Give me the crew and point me at those wrecks. I'll give you a fighting chance. Elena looked around the bridge. Every face showed fear. But underneath the fear was something else. Something stubborn and human. The refusal to give up. The need to survive against all odds. Dr. Tanaka, find that distress signal. I want to know who's out there. She turned to Porter. Begin defensive preparations. Plot escape routes just in case. Finally, she faced Webb. Take whoever you need. Strip those ancient ships of everything useful. We have 18 hours to turn this pile of scrap into something that can face a battle group. Webb was already heading for the door. Captain, when I'm done with her, the Prometheus Rising will make those Cathari wish they'd never left home. The crew moved with purpose. Teams were assembled. Shuttles were launched toward the nearest ancient wrecks. In the cold silence of the graveyard, humans began doing what they did best. They took what others had thrown away. They looked at the impossible and refused to accept it. They started building, and somewhere on his flagship, Commander Thexral watched the human ship's activity with growing unease. He had expected them to run. He had expected surrender. Instead, they were spreading out among the ancient vessels like insects on a corpse. What are they doing? Asked his second-in-command. Thexral's claws tightened on his chair. They're scavenging. They're going to try to fight us with garbage and spare parts. His officer laughed. Then they're fools. No amount of scrap can stop 12 warships. Thexral did not laugh. He had read the reports from Nexus Station. He had seen what humans could do with scrap and spare parts. Increase speed, he ordered. I want to reach them in 12 hours, not 18. The Cathari fleet moved faster into the graveyard. Behind them, the dead ships of a 1,000-year-old war waited in silence. They had been sleeping for a very long time. The humans were about to wake them up. Marcus Webb floated through the corridors of a dead ship. His flashlight cut through darkness that had lasted 1,000 years. Around him, his team of engineers moved in silence. They were inside one of the ancient vessels, a warship that had once carried warriors to battle. Now it carried only dust and ghosts. Over here, called Sarah Chen, his second engineer. She stood before a massive door covered in strange writing. I think this is the main power room. Webb examined the door. The metal was cold under his gloves. Cold and solid, and impossibly strong. We don't have time to cut through this, he muttered. He looked around the corridor. Cables ran along the walls, dead for centuries but still connected. He pulled a small device from his belt, a power cell from the Prometheus Rising. Human technology, simple and crude compared to what surrounded them. What are you doing? Sarah asked. Waking it up. Webb connected the power cell to a junction box on the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then lights flickered. Weak at first, then stronger. The ancient ship groaned as systems that had slept for a millennium began to stir. The massive door slid open. Inside was a room the size of a cathedral. At its center sat an energy core unlike anything Webb had ever seen. It pulsed with soft blue light. Alive. Still alive after all this time. Beautiful. Webb breathed. Sarah was already scanning with her equipment. Marcus, this core has more power output than our entire fleet combined. If we could remove it, we can't. Webb walked around the core, studying it from every angle. It's too big. Too integrated into the ship. He stopped and smiled. But we don't need to remove it. We just need to use it. Back on the Prometheus Rising, Dr. Yuki Tanaka had found the source of the distress signal. It came from a small human vessel wedged inside one of the ancient ships. A research team sent in secret 5 years ago. They had been studying the ancient technology when their ship was damaged. They could not escape. They could not call for help. They had survived on emergency rations and recycled air for years. Captain Vasquez led the rescue team herself. When they cut through the hull of the trapped ship, they found 17 people. Thin, weak, but alive. The lead researcher was a woman named Dr. Catherine Moore. Her hair was gray and her face was lined with years of hardship, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "You came," she said as Elena helped her stand. "After all this time, someone finally came. We received your signal," Elena replied. "Why didn't the coalition send help sooner?" Catherine laughed bitterly. "Because they didn't want anyone to know we were here. Our mission was classified. Study the ancient technology. Learn its secrets. But don't tell anyone." She looked around at the dead ship surrounding them. "We learned too much. We found things that scared them. So they left us to die." "What did you find?" Catherine met Elena's eyes. "Everything. We found everything. Weapon designs, shield technology, engine systems that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months." She paused. "And we figured out how to use some of it." Elena felt hope bloom in her chest. "Can you help us? The Cathari are coming. 12 warships. We have less than 12 hours now." 12 warships? Catherine smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Captain, with what I know and what's in this graveyard, you could destroy 100 warships." The work began in earnest. Catherine's knowledge combined with Webb's engineering skills created something remarkable. Teams worked through the dead ships, pulling components that had waited 1,000 years to be used again. In the engine room of the Prometheus Rising, Webb integrated ancient power conduits with human reactors. The systems should not have been compatible. Different species, different technologies, different centuries. But Webb refused to accept that. "Everything is just energy and information," he told his team as they worked. "It doesn't matter who built it or when. Find the pattern, find the flow. Make it work." Sparks flew. Alarms sounded. 3 times the jury-rigged systems almost exploded. 3 times Webb fixed them with wire and tape and sheer stubbornness. On the outer hull, other teams attached armor plates stripped from ancient warships. The metal was lighter than anything humans had ever made, but stronger than diamond. Laser welders worked around the clock. The Prometheus Rising began to change. She grew scales of ancient metal, weapons she had never carried before. Dr. Tanaka worked with Catherine on the greatest prize of all, a weapon called a stellar lance. The ancient records described it as a ship killer. One shot could crack a planet's shields. The Prometheus Rising had found a damaged one in a wrecked warship. It was missing half its components. "We can't make it work," Tanaka said in frustration. "The firing system needs crystals we don't have, power regulators that don't exist anymore." Catherine studied the damaged weapon. Then she looked at the spare parts scattered across the workbench. Human parts, Cathari parts, parts from 3 other species. All of it salvage. All of it garbage. "Humans," she said slowly, "are very good at substitution. They work together through the night. They replaced ancient crystals with human focusing lenses. They used Cathari power regulators because they fit the mounting brackets. They connected everything with cables that came from 4 different technological traditions. When they finished, the stellar lance looked like a nightmare. Nothing matched. Wires hung loose. Parts that should never have touched were welded together. "This is insane," Tanaka said. "This shouldn't work. The power flows are all wrong. The frequencies don't match." Catherine smiled and placed her hand on the weapon. It will work, because it has to. Because humans built it. And humans don't accept impossible. On the bridge, Captain Vasquez received reports from every team. The Prometheus Rising was no longer the same ship. She was a monster made of human determination and ancient technology. Her systems ran on power cores that should have been incompatible. Her weapons came from a war fought before humanity discovered fire. Captain, Porter reported, the Cathari fleet will arrive in 4 hours. Elena looked at the status screens. Half their modifications were untested. Many were held together with hope and welding tape. Nothing was certain, but they were human. They were survivors, and they had turned a graveyard into an armory. All hands to battle stations, Elena commanded. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can build from scrap. Outside, the dead ships of the graveyard waited in silence. They had seen one great war 1,000 years ago. They were about to witness another, and this time, the scavengers would fight back. Commander Thexral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Pride. His fleet moved through the graveyard like predators hunting wounded prey. 12 warships, 3,000 crew members, enough firepower to glass a continent. Against them stood one human salvage vessel. Commander, his sensor officer reported, the human ship has changed. I'm reading significant modifications to their hull and weapons systems. Thexral clicked his teeth in amusement. They've been playing with the ancient technology. How touching. They think some old scrap will save them. Should we be concerned? Concerned? Thexral laughed. They've had less than a day to work with technology that died before their species learned to walk upright. Whatever they've built, it's nothing compared to proper warships. He straightened in his command chair. All vessels, attack formation, target their engines first. I want them crippled, not destroyed. The Coalition will want to study what they've done. The Cathari fleet spread out into a crescent. Standard tactics for overwhelming a single target. Weapons charged. Shields powered up. 12 captains reported ready. The Dominion's Pride moved to the center of the formation. The human ship waited ahead, floating among the dead giants of the graveyard. Commander, the human vessel is turning toward us. Thexral blinked. Turning toward us? Yes. They're accelerating. They're attacking. On the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, Captain Elena Vasquez gripped her command chair. The ship vibrated beneath her. New engines pulled power from ancient cores. The hull groaned as forces it was never designed to handle pushed it forward. All weapons ready, Porter reported. Stellar lance charged, Tanaka added. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. Catherine says we get 1 shot. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. The system wasn't designed for our power source. Elena watched the enemy fleet grow larger on her screen. 12 ships, thousands of weapons. Certain death by any reasonable calculation. But humans had never been reasonable. Target the lead destroyer with the stellar lance, Elena ordered. Fire when ready. The Prometheus Rising shuddered. Something between a scream and a thunder filled the ship as energy systems from different centuries combined their power. On the hull, the makeshift weapon glowed white-hot. Then it fired. A beam of pure energy crossed the distance between ships in an instant. It struck the lead Cathari destroyer directly in the center. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the destroyer simply stopped existing. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there. The next moment it was gone. Erased from reality. Silence filled both fleets. What? Thexral whispered. Was that? The Prometheus Rising did not give him time to think. The ship dove into the debris field of the graveyard, using the ancient wrecks as cover. Smaller weapons fired. Human plasma cannons mixed with alien beam weapons that should not have worked on a human ship. 2 more Cathari vessels took damage before the fleet could react. Return fire, Thexral screamed. Destroy them. The Cathari weapons finally responded. Energy beams and missiles filled the void. They struck the Prometheus Rising again and again. The ancient armor held. Blasts that would have crippled a normal ship left only scratches on the metal harvested from the dead Titans. The Prometheus Rising absorbed damage that should have been fatal and kept fighting. Inside the ship, alarms blared. Systems failed and were rerouted. Crew members ran through corridors filled with smoke, keeping the impossible machinery working through sheer determination. Webb worked in engineering, surrounded by sparking consoles and broken equipment. His hands moved constantly, rerouting power, replacing burned components, holding the ship together by will, alone. Port shields failing? Someone shouted. Reroute power from secondary weapons. Webb ordered. And someone get me more welding tape. On the bridge, Elena conducted the battle like an orchestra of destruction. She used the graveyard itself as a weapon. Ancient wrecks became obstacles that blocked enemy fire. Dead ships became hiding places from which to ambush. Porter, take us toward the large carrier on the left. The one that's been dead for 1,000 years? It's not dead. Catherine's team activated its defense systems remotely. It just needs a target. The Prometheus Rising swept past the ancient carrier. 3 Cathari ships followed, firing continuously. Elena smiled. Now, the carrier woke up. Weapons that had not fired in a millennium erupted with ancient fury. The 3 Cathari vessels never knew what hit them. The carrier's guns destroyed them in seconds, then went silent again. Its last act of war, performed 1,000 years late. Thexral watched in horror as his fleet died around him. This was not possible. This was not how war worked. You did not lose to scavengers and garbage and ancient ruins. Commander, we've lost 7 ships. We need to retreat. No. Thexral's claws dug into his chair. We will not run from humans. Commander, please. They're using everything against us. The wrecks, the debris, weapons we can't even identify. This isn't a battle. It's a slaughter. The Prometheus Rising appeared on their sensors. It moved through the graveyard like a ghost, appearing and disappearing behind the dead ships. Each time it appeared, another Cathari vessel took damage. Thexral stared at the human ship. It looked nothing like it had before. Ancient armor covered it like scales. Strange weapons jutted from its hull. It was ugly. It was impossible. It was terrifying. They don't fight like warriors, he said quietly. They fight like survivors. Commander? Thexral closed his eyes. He had started this battle expecting an easy victory. He had called the humans dangerous and vowed to stop them. Now his fleet was broken. His warriors were dead, and the humans kept fighting with weapons built from scraps and dreams. All ships retreat. Get us out of here. The remaining Cathari vessels turned and ran. 5 ships out of 12. Less than half. They fled the graveyard at maximum speed, leaving their dead behind. On the Prometheus Rising, the crew watched them go. No one cheered. They were too tired. Too amazed that they were still alive. Elena sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. Her heart pounded in her chest. Damage report. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Stellar Lance is offline permanently. We lost the port weapons array. Porter paused and laughed weakly. But we're alive. Somehow, we're alive. Through the window, the graveyard stretched out in all directions. Silent again. Peaceful again. The dead ships had served one last time. They had helped the living survive. Send a message to the Coalition, Elena said. Tell them what happened here. Tell them the Cathari attacked without authority and were defeated. And tell them what else? Elena looked at her ship. Her beautiful, impossible ship, made of human stubbornness and ancient technology. Tell them that the Graveyard of Titans is under human protection now. Anyone who wants to study it can ask politely. She smiled. And tell them to think very carefully before threatening us again. The message went out. The galaxy listened. And everything changed. The footage spread across the galaxy like fire. Every news network, every planet, every station. Millions of beings watched as a single human ship destroyed a Cathari battle group using weapons built from scrap and ancient technology. In the Coalition Great Hall, delegates sat in stunned silence. The same screen that had shown the Battle of Nexus Station now showed the Battle of the Graveyard. Ships erased from existence. Ancient wrecks coming alive to defend their new masters. A salvage vessel transformed into a monster. High Arbiter Zindal stood alone at the speaking platform. His scales had gone pale. His voice was quiet. I warned you, he said. I told you they were dangerous. And now you see. They took a graveyard and made it into a fortress. They took garbage and made it into weapons. What will they take next? What will they build next? Ambassador Velketh rose from his seat. They took nothing that belonged to anyone. The graveyard has been abandoned for 1,000 years, and, They only built weapons because your people attacked them without authority. Commander Thexral acted alone. The Dominion does not approve. The Dominion sent 12 warships into forbidden space to attack a rescue mission. Velketh's voice was cold. 5 came back. Perhaps you should worry less about what humans might do and more about what your own people have already done. The argument exploded across the hall. Factions formed and reformed. Some demanded punishment for the Cathari. Others demanded restrictions on humanity. Others simply sat in shock, trying to understand how the galaxy had changed so quickly. Far from the politics and shouting, the Prometheus Rising limped home. The ship was wounded but alive. Her crew was exhausted but proud. They had done something that would be remembered for centuries. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her quarters, writing her official report. The words came slowly. How do you describe the impossible? How do you explain what happened when you stopped believing that anything was impossible? A knock came at her door. Dr. Catherine Moore entered, looking healthier than she had when they found her. Food and rest had done wonders. I wanted to thank you, Catherine said, for coming, for believing there might be someone out there worth saving. Elena set down her pen. You saved us. Without your knowledge, we would have died. I gave you information. You and your crew did the rest. Catherine sat down across from her. I've spent years studying alien technology. I've seen what species across the galaxy have built, but I've never seen anything like what your engineer did. He took pieces from different civilizations, different centuries, and made them work together. That's not just intelligence. That's something else. Stubbornness, Elena said. Humans don't like being told something is impossible. No, it's more than that. Catherine leaned forward. Other species see technology as sacred, unchangeable, something to be preserved and copied exactly. Humans see it as raw material, something to be taken apart and rebuilt. You don't worship your tools. You improve them. Elena thought about the Prometheus Rising, about the ancient armor welded to modern hulls, about the stellar lance cobbled together from a dozen different technologies, about Marcus Webb working through the night because he refused to accept that the systems couldn't be compatible. The galaxy is afraid of us, Elena said quietly. The galaxy should be afraid of us. Catherine smiled. Not because we want to conquer them, but because we've shown that their rules don't apply to us. We look at their forbidden technology and see opportunity. We look at their impossible problems and see challenges. We look at their garbage and see potential. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. The coalition will spend years arguing about what to do with humanity. They'll propose restrictions and sanctions and monitoring. None of it will work, because you can't restrict people who don't accept restrictions. You can't limit people who don't accept limits. Then what happens? Catherine's smile grew wider. Then humanity changes everything, just like we always do. 2 weeks later, the Prometheus Rising arrived at Earth. Crowds gathered at the spaceport. News cameras floated everywhere. The crew walked down the ramp as heroes. Elena stood before the cameras and answered their questions. What happened in the graveyard? How did they survive? What did this mean for humanity's future? Finally, a reporter asked the question everyone wanted answered. Captain Vasquez, the galaxy is frightened. They say humans are dangerous. They say you turned worthless scrap into weapons of war. What do you say to them? Elena looked at the cameras, at the millions of humans watching across the planet, at the billions of aliens watching across the galaxy. We didn't start that fight, she said. We finished it. We protected our people. We rescued scientists that had been abandoned to die. We did what humans have always done. We survived. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. The galaxy looks at junkyards and sees waste. We see resources. They look at broken machines and see garbage. We see spare parts. They look at ancient technology and see relics. We see tools. Her eyes found the camera directly. We don't build weapons because we want war. We build them because we refuse to lose. We refuse to die. We refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. She gestured at her ship. The Prometheus Rising stood behind her, still bearing the scars of battle. Ancient armor mixed with human steel. Alien weapons mounted next to human guns. A ship that should not exist. A ship that had changed everything. Give us your scraps, Elena said. Give us your garbage. Give us your abandoned technology and forgotten machines. We will find a use for them. We will make something new. And if anyone threatens us or our friends," she smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "We will build something worse." The broadcast ended. The galaxy watched. In 1,000 junkyards on 1,000 worlds, other species began to look at their discarded technology with new eyes. And in the Coalition Hall, as delegates continued to argue about what to do with humanity, a quiet thought spread from mind to mind. They had been throwing things away for centuries. Millennia even. Broken ships, failed experiments, ancient relics, all of it discarded, all of it forgotten, all of it waiting for someone who saw potential instead of garbage. The humans had found the graveyard of titans. They would find other places too. Other treasures, other opportunities that the galaxy had abandoned. And each time they found something, they would build something new. Something impossible. Something dangerous. That was the human way. Take what others throw away. Make it work. Make it better. Make it something that changes everything. The galaxy had created mountains of scrap over countless years. The humans were just getting started.